please hear me out. Which is
Look, guys, we're listening. This is our listening ears. Okay,
I would
go ahead.
give I don't get enough airtime.
I'm writing
The
that
numbers
down.
say otherwise.
Hi, Morins.
Hey, lessons. Like that?
Welcome to another week of More or Less. Woohoo.
Yay.
And hi, listeners and viewers, all you YouTubers. Thank you for once again joining us to get inside the back channel of all things happening in Silicon Valley. So we are excited to sit down with everyone here. Let's see who we got in the house. We got Britt and Dave Morin, the co-managing partners of Offline Ventures, coming in all the way from Marin Mill Valley, California.
Hey.
Representing the northern part of the Bay Area.
It's the North Bay versus the South Bay.
Yeah, our logo.
No, we're not South Bay. I keep learning this. We are mid-peninsula.
No, it depends on your perspective. You're definitely South Bay.
I get in a lot of trouble for saying we live in the South Bay with other people.
I think you're right.
Okay.
Might as well be on Sand Hill.
If you're south of San Francisco, you're in the South Bay.
Well, the pool house is slightly south of the main house. I'm south of you. So.
Yes. And coming in from the south side of the property, Sam Lesson of Slow Ventures. How are you guys doing this week?
Oh, it's been a week, Jess.
I'm awesome.
It's been a week.
Mostly a week end that we celebrated your gala, which you have lots of thoughts about.
Oh, I love them.
The
so
NFL, which I know Sam doesn't want to hear about. And
it's fine. But I will tell you, it is amazing to watch my wife, who never has watched a football game, sitting there
so not true.
with her football facts riveted in the 49ers game. Coming into bedtime, Sam, it's a great game. Put the book down with your son and come watch the game.
Guys,
I've never been more proud.
Dave
Jeff.
and I were getting ready for bed last night, brushing our teeth and stuff in our bathroom as we do. And we were talking together and we were like, I feel like we really influenced Jess a lot this year. First off, it was Taylor Swift.
Greatest influence on me.
Now it's the NFL. Family. Like, what will be next, Jess?
Okay. We need some major fact checking. I've been a Taylor Swift fan for like the last decade. Okay. So now have I followed every outfit she's worn, place she's had dinner, friend she has coffee with? No. Do I do that now? Yes. Are you guys
No, you moved to
that?
the Swiftie category. You were just a fan and now you're a Swiftie.
So far.
It's because the 95th season of The Queen died. And so you ran out of content. So you had to move on to Taylor Swift.
It's fair.
True. I do think there's a relationship between the death of Lizzie and the rise of Taylor
Lizzie's death has done more for Taylor Swift than because everyone moved over. It's like basically the spin-off season of the Royals with what's his name? What's the prince's name that everyone hates?
Harry. We're done with that
Harry
narrative.
spin-off didn't work. And so Taylor just took the entire Queen's audience. That's what happened.
There's a lot to that. But I also my family's watched football for as long as I can remember growing up. I watched football. I had not been following the 49ers. And now not only did I watch the 49ers game second by second and almost hurt my jaw with gasping with so much delight and drama. But then I had to follow up and watch Sunday's games because I really have to know what we're going on and what we're heading into. Yeah.
The funniest thing of this whole thing, I always
Jess, I have a gift for you.
Oh my goodness, Dave!
Dave is holding up a 49ers hat.
I love it. How am I going to get it for this weekend? I will
make sure this gets to you.
A drone will deliver it to your house.
Thank you.
My favorite is our kids do not watch linear television. They've never seen linear television. So they're watching this football game and the ads, the car ads.
They love the ads.
They love the car ads.
Oh,
you know, it's like unbelievable. Everything's It's like, playing the game of what is this advertising? They're like, truck.
No, it's the jingles that they love. Liberty, liberty, liberty. That's the one Austin loves. And then BK Have It Your Way is the
BK,
second jingle he
but
loves.
It's just funny because like our children, they've never seen commercials. They only see YouTube, and then we buy them premium because the commercials are terrible. And so like,
I think they should see commercials. It's just like a rite of passage.
Lion had something else to say about the cars. Like, oh, I wish we wrote it down. It was really good. But the sort of looking at football commercials through the eyes of a 6-year-old is really something. So anyway, we'll get to do it all again this weekend.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Yes, this episode is also 3 49ers fans and Sam.
I'm not. I mean, can't. I was watching.
Sam, are you going for Detroit?
I liked Joe Montana.
Oh
I grew up watching the 49ers as a child.
So we're at the information gala on Friday night, which was wonderful. Thank you so much, Jess. And the number of people that came up to us who are like top tier Silicon Valley people and were like, why does Sam hate football so much? Was like pretty impressive, I have to say. I feel like there are way more Moors in the crowd at the gala on the football front than lesses.
Football's. I am not against
Sam
football.
doesn't hate football, but I gotta say, I mean, it is just so exciting.
And I quote from last week, Sam, you said, does our audience really even care about football? Like, and you said that word for word.
I lit millions of dollars on fire investing in a new football league. So I get it.
Sam's the only one.
That's true, actually.
I just incinerated it, right? So I get it.
I was at that table. Yeah.
That's why you hate football now. Investor trauma.
That was one of the funniest financings in the history of the world, because a bunch of without getting into details, and it was all done in good faith, starting with a bunch of people being like, wow, we can watch a football league for like $10 million. That seems like a really good idea. Like, let's do that.
And football is missing half of the year.
And then after like a few games, you're like, oh shit, we need like $100 million like yesterday. Like, this is pretty expensive. It was like a pretty funny JV. Silicon Valley tries to do something other than software experience.
Is it just the talent's expensive? That's what creates.
Well, you go to a football game, a venture-backed football game, and you say to yourself, wow, $10 million just buys a lot of shit. You're like, this is unbelievable. There's a stadium, there's dance, there's all these people. This is like really amazing. And you realize that actually it costs a lot more than $10 million. That's like the quick answer.
Venture-backed football. So this is actually going to bring us to yet another theme that we have to talk about this week, because another week, 2024, not being kind to the private technology markets, startup landscape, or the news business for that matter. A third of the LA Times' newsroom has been laid off over the past year. A quarter this week. That was the news.
Was that like so 3 people? The 3 of the last 10 people were laid off?
115, Sam, including Pulitzer Prize winners in their Washington, D.C. bureau.
Well, can you hire them?
Do you want them?
The Pulitzer Prize winners.
Yes, I can hire them.
Pulitzer Prize job security in 2024? I don't think so.
Wait, didn't we also lose Sports Illustrated last week? Did I hear
Sports
that?
Illustrated. Well, we kind of lost Sports Illustrated. Like we're set up to lose Sports Illustrated.
Oh, okay.
So let's see. We can take our pick. We can start with news. We can start with tech. Picture. Actually, they're not analogous, but
yeah. And you've got the WME Netflix.
Oh, sports coming to Netflix, or is it sports? They argue it's entertainment.
It's definitely entertainment.
Or is it really just the streamers spending more and more money to reacquire their customers?
There's also, we're doing the brainstorm for the episode on the episode. This is great. Thanks for sticking with us, listeners. But I also have to say, I think the story of Netflix is actually kind of incredible. Reported incredible earnings. Well, not incredible, but compared to the rest of the world, going down, down, down. Netflix is going up, up, up. And this was a company supposedly that was going to be killed by the streaming wars. And they seem to be doing just fine. So, well, let's start. Let's get through what's happening in startup land, because this is, part of our bread and butter. This week in the hot seat, it was Brex. You guys, anyone use Brex?
Yeah.
Anyone know the...
Brit & Co uses Brex. And by the way, remember the SVB collapse of a year ago?
Yes.
Brex actually gained so many more customers during that collapse.
Well, it turned out they also had a lot of customers. I remember when we were auditing our entire portfolio, something like a third were using Brex and the other third were using Mercury, and then everybody else was with SVB.
Yeah. So Brex started, for those of you who haven't been following this closely, Brex, many, many years ago, got into financial services for startups through the corporate credit card business. And then I think, like so many other fintech companies, direct competitors like Ramp, but you really see this with all of them, Chime and so on, they don't want to be point solutions. So you've got all these tech startups trying to disrupt parts of banking who kind of feel like they need to add services, be a platform, take deposits, give loans, you name it, and you name it. And from where I sit, it's been really hard to see these guys, to see them all really break in and build the kind of businesses and up to the levels of valuation that they all promise their investors. So the news this week was Brex, 20% layoff, replaced, I think, CTO and COO, 2 members of the management team, all broken in the information.
Did they also get rid of their Pulitzer Prize winners, or they kept those?
No, they kept them. Yeah.
Okay.
No, but I do see that they added AI as a feature to their homepage.
Oh my goodness.
Look, I think this is
what's happening here?
Here's what's happening. There's a broader thing that's gone on for a long time, which is that basically, if you think about how startups work in a lot of cases, in a lot of these types of verticals, you find one little hack and you ride it, right? And like you ride that hack for a while, but it's not going to last. And so at some point you have to say like, okay, my hack that I used to initially acquire customers or grow, the way AWS is valuable is not any one service. It's basically the lock-in through having 1,000 point touch points with them. The same thing with banks or any of these kind of commodity businesses in any single monoline thing. And so we've just seen this over and over again. Some things can get really big really quick, especially in the internet era, riding like a single hack pretty far. And the interesting question is, will venture capitalists then give them, what type of valuation are they given, or how much credit are they given for then actually the hard work that comes after that, which is platformizing and creating the deep relationships that are actually valuable with their customers? Because no one hack actually survives, right? And so I think what you're seeing is this kind of thing where, because, we had this with DTC companies and early Facebook platform. People are like, oh shit, we can deeply target people. Like that means we can sell a ton of one product if we get really good at nailing it narrowly. We saw this with digital health, right? If you look at kind of the Romans of the world and things like that, they got really good at like single things. But the problem is like the enterprise value of that, the stickiness of it is super low because everyone else can also follow you and do that type of stuff. And the hard work is really becoming a platform. I don't think they'll all survive on this, right? I think some might make the leap, but it's not really clear, what the natural barriers are or like who's going to do that. It's going to take a lot of execution horsepower to go from giving someone credit for getting really big on one trick, right, to actually then having the relationships to create enterprise value with a bunch of customers. So it's all very like expected, to be honest, but it's interesting for sure.
Do you think it's just a hack? I look at this maybe a little bit more intensely, that a lot of these are just good old fashioned normal businesses masquerading as technology businesses when they're
Absolutely.
just not technology businesses, right? And like Sam, you and I, we fell trapped to this in the DDC era, just like anybody else in venture in that phase, where there were a lot of people that put a lot of capital to work trying to add technology to an old school business to see if it was possible to build technology margins and scale. And it just didn't work. And so is that what's really going on here with something like Brex, where like this is a bank, and to build a bank, you've got a lot of labor and cogs and things built in that like just aren't, it's just not pure technology. Like you can't.
It's not a bank. It started out being, it's not a bank. The question is, can you value it as someday becoming a bank, and how hard is that leap? I'll tell you, the interesting thing that I'm seeing is kind of the opposite. Like we're really into this idea now because there is leverage in technology. And there are industries that for lots of reasons have historically been resistant to technology, right? And so there are opportunities in putting technology into those industries. The question is, what's the pattern for it? Is it the startup from zero with no customer relationships and no enterprise value and no profitability that can grow really big on a hack and then platformize and compete with Bank of America? That's one pattern. The other pattern, which we're really excited about, is the no, let's just like buy the incumbents, right? And that's what we did with this Metropolis deal, which is pretty interesting. Where like we had better, the Metropolis team had better software for operating parking garages, but it just turned out that for a bunch of structural reasons, it didn't matter. Like it was super hard to sell, right? Like the sale didn't. There was a bunch of reasons why the interests in that industry didn't care that the software could make them better margins and more money. What was the answer? Just private equity. You just buy the incumbents, right? And then make them more profitable and better that way, right? So like, I think there's just a question
General
of,
Catalyst just bought a hospital, right?
yeah, I mean, this stuff,
Well, General Catalyst has been doing this stuff forever, right? Like this is a
yeah, I just think this
pattern.
is the future where we basically like the sale, if you think about it on a B2B side, there's the cost of sales and go to market, which is enormous, right? And there's a bunch of industries where it's nearly impossible, even though they would benefit from technology. On the consumer side, there's like the cheap acquisition channels that were opened up with hyper targeting. But in both cases, the question is, what is that a bridge to, right? Like, where does that get you? And like, does that get you to actually dethroning Bank of America? Does that get you to dethroning big health platforms or whatever it's going to be? The answer is no. Like, there's just like, it doesn't get you dethroning AWS. Like, no, like there's like 1,000 touch points that make them super sticky. And there's going to be new capital approaches and new approaches kind of hybridizing tech and VC and PE that kind of say, yes, there is leverage in software, but we're not going to unlock it the way we've unlocked it over the last 20 years.
But I was just going to say that like this is just private equity, right? Like you're doing private equity with technology, right?
Well,
like,
let's stay on fintech for a second. I want to hear from Britt. Britt, as an investor, also like reactions to Brex, but also would you invest in the fintech category now and under what set of circumstances?
So I think with Brex, it's kind of what Dave was saying. They realized, we raised 2 years ago at a $12.3 billion valuation in the bubble. I'm assuming they've probably been trying to raise and haven't been finding much success. They spent $17 million in burn in the last quarter of the last year. And it's just like the numbers don't work. And so with this cut, they say that their financial plan is to be above cash flow positive with the current cash they already have, AKA they're intending not to raise, or they're maybe doing debt or something, which means 4 years runway. So I think they're realizing, the venture capital dollars have dried up. I've got to be a real company now. I've got to be able to control my destiny. And to Sam's point, they only serve less than 1% of the whole market. So it's like, even if you have hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, that's tiny in this market, and you just don't have the distribution advantage. So I think it's really difficult in fintech right now, to Sam's point. I'm not saying that the bigger players aren't trying to innovate, but I certainly haven't been wowed with what they're doing, but they still command such a large percentage of the market that they're kind of buying time to either like maybe roll some stuff up or build or do something to innovate in places where these, multi-billion-dollar fintech platforms are already operating.
Well, it's kind of like, Zelle actually is pretty big, right? Like, it sucks, but like it's pretty big. It's like, but like, you talk about kind of how these things go. Like, I do think I'm a huge believer that there are places for quote unquote disruption and new business models all over the place. But I think that in some of these industries that are regulated or highly complicated, health and fintech being probably the best examples, but there are others, it's just a lot harder than it looks to go from having a big headline MAU number and some revenue, or like and some GMV, to actually being something with high enterprise value.
And Britt, I think the information reported Brex is burning 17 million
a month. Okay, not a quarter.
So that's
even
a lot.
Crazier.
But is it? I mean, it's not. It depends what era we're in and how big the prize.
Well, I think we said that they were going to run out of money pretty soon. So I mean,
2026. 2026. That's fine. I wouldn't obsess about the 17 million a month. I mean, it is a lot, but like, the prize is big. Like, if they have a plan, right? Like, I don't think it's like an inexcusable amount of money to burn. But I do think the reality is they probably got credit for being much further along the platform and enterprise value case than they actually were, right? And if they're not going to get that credit again, it's an expensive down round to refinance it, right? And so they're trying to be responsible and say, we'll take more time.
I think their valuation is like at least 3x overinflated, like 12.3 billion.
Yeah, I mean, they're not alone.
To Sam, the point you were making about the platformization, there being challenges to that, I also think you have to look at, like, again, what is this market that you're in? I mean, these financial services are low margin, kind of big scale plays. And then you kind of diversify and get a little better margin by doing things like lending, or you tack on, not that that's high margin necessarily. And to me, again, investors kind of wanted to believe that technology was going to change not just how you acquire customers and cut some cost out of the business, but the fundamental business models that these products and services are in. But now you just sort of have subscale tech companies, subscale relative to the big banks, like kind of in exactly the same business.
Yeah, I mean, like even small banks haven't survived. Like if you think about like consolidation
Yes.
in the industry, it's like you can't even be a good small bank. Like you, because of all the dynamics you're talking about, you have like there's a reason the whole industry is consolidated. So you basically have to have this theory that for some technological reason or customer acquisition reason, you can basically overcome all of that and scale so big and so fast that it doesn't matter. And I think that's like, again, is it if you want to dream and have to deploy billions of dollars of capital somewhere, like the prize is big. So like maybe that's a bet you want to make, but like it's a pretty silly one from a business first principles perspective.
I'm curious what you guys make of sort of Stripe. I mean, so if you look at fintech as a category, you've got companies like Brex and Ramp kind of coming at the small business through the cards, through other kinds of services. I mean, obviously the big kahuna from a valuation perspective is Stripe. Still, though, it essentially in a commodity kind of payments processing like business. I don't know, or should they be in this camp of sort of companies are skeptical about, or what do you think?
That one's harder, interesting as we've been talking, just looking at Brex and Ramp. I mean, these are two companies focused on the spend, just to grossly oversimplify this, focused on the spending of money side of things, and Stripe's on the receiving of money side of things. And they've also been just an extraordinarily good friend to developers, creators, since really day one, right? Like the reason that they took off so quickly was that it was as simple as one API call or one pretty simple, I think, JavaScript include that you could throw into your site and start taking payments today. And their network effect has only increased over time. And so I think that Stripe benefits from a real network effect that these other businesses do not. And so you can get into the fundamentals, but there is like a real network effect.
And then in the market, I mean, they also a year ago cut their valuation from 100 to 50 as they raised a new round. I just think all of these companies are having to correct themselves to right size for the market. Of course, that's what we've been talking about.
I mean, everyone with the biggest tech company, big is winning right now. So everyone with the biggest tech companies in the world is clearly in that boat. I mean, here's the interesting thing with Stripe. I mean, I like it as a product. I use it all over the place, right? Like I think it's a great product for small scale businesses. The problem they have is that once you have any scale, to your point about it being a commodity, you just renegotiate with them. Like no one pays rack rate prices to them, like once they actually have real volume. So then the question becomes this interesting game of like, do you believe the future is more small apps making a little bit of money, where Stripe is easy? I don't think there's an easy replacement for them if you're tiny, right? That's as good and it's a great interface and like there's a lot to really like about it. But if the reality is the future is consolidation to big players again, whether it's an Uber or whatever, like where most of the volumes coming through, they're like, they will never be able to charge rack rate to those people because those people do have options, right, to process. It's worth it for them to look at a lot of more like things that are annoying to use but cheaper and like do all sorts of other things. And so, their ultimate value, I think there's this like interesting proxy bet where like Stripe is a very interesting proxy bet for the growth of small developers from a overall spend perspective versus like large companies, right? And if the future is large companies in this era, then Stripe is challenged. If the future is a ton of tiny developers and they're in a really good place, right?
Well, and there are two variables to that too. And we also have to, if you look at the customers, Brex and Ramp serve smaller businesses and startups. Stripe too, although, maybe less so.
No, Stripe definitely serves. I mean, that's their value at least. Like the GMV might be from the head, but where they make their money is on the tail.
And as we talked about ad nauseum, like that market might be contracting, might be growing, right? This is the classic, like, it is a startup whose clients are startups a good investment in a down cycle kind of point, right? And so, I mean, that's a little simplistic, and I think we're past the .com bubble days where people imploded because their customers like went out of business. But I think it's probably still relevant. I mean, this may be also something affecting Carta and others. I mean, it's certainly kind of at the core of Silicon Valley Bank's problem with the venture industry not growing its deposits as much. So I wonder about that. I also think, Stripe, I don't know, and I should know if it's still kind of calling itself the AWS of payments, but there was a period with all these companies, back to Sam's platform point, that their whole valuation, recruiting, so on and so forth, was like being this one-stop shop for all of your services. And then it turns out again that they found that one trick or point solution kind of thing. And that's really what they turn out to be. So I don't actually know the exact answer with Stripe, but I sense there's some of that. And I hear less about, the AWS of payments narrative.
I also think you have to think about the Shopify factor here, which is that, when I talk about network effect, I think of the network effect on the consumer side, right? Like, Sam, you're right. The developer, as it gets bigger, can swap out to some other provider if they have a better rate, like these types of things. But the real value they have in keeping Stripe that goes beyond just the actual monetary incentive is the identity layer that they provide, where, like, when I want to check out somewhere and I've already used Stripe on one site, like, every time I put in my phone number, it automatically recognizes me, and it's a lot easier for me to check out if I've used Stripe somewhere else, and that's super valuable. The problem is,
I clicked the Shopify link,
but Shopify also provides this, right? And Shopify is actually in a higher position in the stack with the customer. And so I kind of wonder, actually, as Shopify continues its sort of reign of being the small business technology provider of choice, like, do they begin to disintermediate Stripe and start to take away some of the leverage Stripe has in the ecosystem? Like, that to me is a more interesting question.
I just wonder also from a history of, like, the industry perspective, like, I feel like the configuration of the industry for a long time is a bunch of shitty legacy players that do X and they're pretty good businesses, right? And then you can be the smart young kids who basically like, ooh, we're going to do it better, right? And like do it quickly, and we're going to ride the wave of early startups. And because you're competing just against the lumbering beasts, right, who don't get it, then like you can ride that really far, right, and really freely to like a really interesting place, and then you figure out where you're going from there. The reality of modern technology world is there's two problems with that narrative. One is like the big companies aren't as dumb as they used to be, right? Like, and so they might not be great, but they're kind of good enough. And the switching cost or like the changing costs and their advantages in other ways means that like it's not so simple to just be like, well, our product's better and we're going to ride that. Two, the ecosystem is 10 times bigger than it was, right? And so any good idea is going to get done 10 or 15 times by actually good people, right? And so the ability, you talk about the Brex versus Ramp versus whatever, right? Like that kind of space of like, it's a good business because it's a legacy business that we're going to do better. That used to be like a reasonable way to approach building a startup. And I just don't think it is anymore, right? Like I think that you need a reason that's more structural about why incumbents can't do it, right? And you need a better reason why you guys can and other startups won't, right? Than I think you used to.
Yeah, and maybe you're saying this, but like I think you need to be operating on a business model that is very, very difficult for an incumbent to switch to.
Right. It needs to really hurt them to switch it.
Yeah.
Like, that's why
like no printing presses.
Robinhood kind of did that, right? Like Robinhood was like, hey, we're going to do this thing with $0 trades. We'll just sell the data on the side. Don't worry about it. But like with zero, with like free trading that like the incumbents like structurally had a real problem doing, right? And they were able to ride that pretty far. Now, even they now are stuck in the same position where they have to come up with a bunch of other products. What's it really worth? But it is a $10 billion company, not a $0 billion company, right? Like it's not, but I think that kind of question of like, it used to be, you just can assume that the people you're playing against the table on the other side who are big companies are dumb. Now it's like, no, they're not that stupid, and they do have a bunch of advantages you don't. So you might get somewhere, but are you going to get to being huge? Meh, I don't know.
And I guess that we can't leave this conversation without talking about crypto and what's going on kind of under the hood with crypto right now, right? Like a lot of the transaction costs that are part of the cost of these companies like Stripe providing their services, particularly cross-border and internationally, are like, very real parts of the crypto stack are starting to actually attack at. And like, I think that's like actually an interesting thing going on right now that not a lot of people are talking about. I'm curious your thoughts there, Sam.
Hell yeah. I mean, let's plug Mike Hudak and Sling, right? Like, which is freaking sweet, right? Like in terms of you talk about cross-border, like built on Solana, Rails, like the kind of next generation of how you do a bunch of this stuff. Like there's stuff coming. And I do think, if you think about it, it's like the Stripe version of the world in that era was, let's take a bunch of legacy, terrible infrastructure, terrible business deals, hard. I remember signing whatever it was, like the credit card processing agreements, like before Stripe existed. And then even Braintree, which is the kind of the first shot, wasn't great, but it was better. They were like, okay, we're gonna take all the complexity and we're gonna hide it all and build like this API layer. So as a developer, you don't need to know anything about this. Just like put this JavaScript on. Sweet. But the guts still sucked, right? You're still building on terrible legacy stuff. And I think the promise of crypto is like to blow away all of that, right? With a new ecosystem that actually is clean and well set up. And look, that's fraught with challenges of its own, but it does mean that you don't need that shim anymore, right? Like on a lot of these things. And that is pretty disruptive, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing that in Latin America and other areas, there's starting to be payment providers that are doing their cross-border, settling, clearing, like payments related stuff. They'll do it on chain with a stable coin and then just convert it back after the transaction's over. And nobody even knows this happened. And like, to me,
so
like,
why is this happening now? It just takes some time.
Versus
like this
when?
has been
meaning
5 years ago
versus 5 years ago. I just think it's been time. I think it's just time. Like, people now look at this as a stable technology. A lot of these technologies are, despite big macro headwinds the last couple of years, things like Solana have continued to perform and make good on the promise that they started off with. And so you've got this thing happening where trust is just increasing and people are realizing that the tech actually does work.
It didn't even a year ago. Like the tech does actually work now in a way that it didn't even a year ago. And then I think the stablecoin thing, people forget stablecoins aren't that old, right? Like, and it turns out that really mattered. Like the early Bitcoiners would say, you don't need a USD coin. Like you just trade it on both ends, and like this is a hyper efficient market and blah blah. And like that is intellectually true, but practically I think challenging for people to get their heads around. Whereas like stable coins, which do have some of their own challenges, but they've gone mainstream. They're really boring. Right. And people trust them. And I think that that's actually a really important step. So it's
stable coins have gone mainstream. What do you mean by that? I don't use them.
Stable coins aren't that old. And you look at like Tether USDC, that type of stuff, right? Like that, even a few years ago, people were like pretty worried about their viability or like where the money is and things like that. And I think we've just gotten to the point, rightly or wrongly, where people are just like, yeah, this stuff is fine. It works.
And by the stuff and these people, you mean like crypto?
I don't think
people?
It's like purely mainstream yet, to Jess's point. Mainstream to people in like the right industries.
I just need to like we know four.
I don't think my mom
is
taking USDC yet, at least not knowingly. But like, I just think it's like, I don't think the difference to my mom between like having $1 in Venmo and having a USDC coin in Sling or something is going to be it's getting very minor. Right.
Yeah.
And just explain to me why your mom would have a USD coin in Sling, like if she wanted to send money to, outside the US?
In Sling, well, because I sent her $1. I don't know. I paid for gas. Like it just like that's how why does anyone have any Venmo like balance, right? Like someone paid for some pizza.
No, as opposed to Venmo. Like how is Joe Schmo Consumer, our great listeners of the pod, like how are they going to be interacting with
I would prefer, as a proud, an original investor and advisor in Venmo, I'm very proud of Venmo and kind of my personal career history and our dear friends, Cortina and Ikram. But like, it's not in a great place, right? As an app, right? It is still big, but it's like kind of shitty. The app's kind of broken now. It's been, owned by PayPal for the last decade. And they've kind of like, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's not usable. I certainly use it, but it's like pretty terrible experience. And like Sling is just clean and fast and works, right? And it runs on crypto rails, which does mean that internationally moving money is instant and free and all that good stuff. So like, it's not there yet, but I think you'll see that direction, right? And like my mom will end up downloading at the same rate, the same reason she probably has Square Cash somewhere in her 15th Android screen, right? It'll just happen because someone will pay her in it. And then she'll be like, what is this? And you kind of go from
there. And then she will keep using it because it's faster than Venmo.
It just feels because it won't crash and it'll feel better. And like when she wants to send internationally, it'll work and like that type of stuff.
Yeah, so international seems to be the killer use case.
That is the stated killer use case. But I think even domestically, like all these apps have just gotten kind of bloated and shitty, right? Like I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot of emojis in Venmo, but other than that, I have no problem. Okay.
I think I have a problem in Venmo because my handle is, because I was, one of the first 10 users is just Sam. So for decades, people have been paying me their rent and then being like, oh shit. Or like I get constant stream of requests
Me
for
too.
stuff.
I get I'm just Brittany, which is a weird name to call myself because I've been Brit for a long time, but I get multiple a day. Do you get this many a day? Like $20, I'm hungry.
I do too. I'm just Jessica, by the way. So any of our listeners who just want to pay us, now you know.
You can tip us, but you can't request money from us.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, it's like I get a constant stream of requests for tuition, a constant stream of, oh shit, I just paid you, give me my money back.
Yeah, they got to work on their spam filter on Venmo.
Okay, but we do have a particular set of challenges around this. I got to say, I don't even mind using Zelle. I don't even mind using Zelle.
I hadn't even heard of Zelle until we were in Hawaii and somebody wanted to pay Kauai. Zelle in Kauai is like a thing.
It is a thing.
Is there an app? I've only used it through Banco.
You can use it through our bank's app. It just says send money and you click it and it goes to Zelle.
I have used that, and it's good for sending lots of money. The problem with Venmo is because of all the spam and fraud issues. Like you send like $12 and it's like you are over your limit. You fraud. And I'm like, I'm just spending Jane's rent money she sent me. Like,
well, when it comes to fintech, let's say watch the space, shall we? Should we hang a big watch the space sign on it? I mean, I think Dave and Sam and the crypto believers.
I'm in the crypto believer. Yeah.
Big crypto. She's the only one of us.
Yeah, we're all crypto believers.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, I forgot. I went to your crypto conference.
I'm like all about helping women, especially learn how to. I'm trying to make this go mainstream to your mom, Sam.
If everybody at that conference had bought crypto that day,
a lot of them did, to be honest.
Yeah.
That was a great conference. Was it at LinkedIn? Am I remember in San Francisco?
LinkedIn, San Francisco.
17. And then I did another one in early 2021. So
it sounds like, Britt, the answer is whenever it's time for you to do your next crypto conference, sell.
Sell or buy. My nanny.
Sell. It's like you're like, you hit it. It's like,
no, listen, my nanny came and I didn't give financial advice, but she bought a Bitcoin after this thing because she like learned about it. It was $5,000. It was her life savings. And she told me, and I was like, oh shit. I was like, this is really risky. And she's like, I'm just going to see what happens. And now it's 40. So like, she is like super stoked. She came to my conference.
That's a real... That's a lose-lose for you. It's like if Bitcoin goes down, then you lost your poor nanny who's working for you and probably cares a lot of money. And if it goes up, she's going to quit because she's too rich. So like, you're screwed either way.
Well, I think the good news is now she moved on her own later on, and I think now she's starting her own business because of that investment. Yeah.
By the way, I've always wanted Bitcoin to exist. Bitcoin. Yeah. I'm just going to plug that for people to ideate on.
Yeah, we're not. I don't have the mental bandwidth to bring up that conversation, so we're going to leave this one where it is, and I will have to prepare. Okay, fintech. Watch this space. Let's talk media. Let's talk Netflix for a sec. I know I was talking about it earlier.
I didn't look at these numbers.
In and around media.
Was this yesterday?
Yeah, that's up 13% or something, right? Yeah.
Up 13%. I mean, basically, they beat analysts' expectations, which we all know is whoop-de-doo. But at the same time, what I'm struck by is like, wasn't this supposed to be streaming Armageddon? Like, wasn't the narrative that everyone would have their own streaming service and therefore, there just like wasn't the kind of growth for the behemoths like Netflix. And then the cost of content was going to go through the roof. And yada, yada.
Oh, the actors strike.
And the writers strike.
But isn't the writers strike good?
No, because then they don't have enough content to be plugging for people to think their subscription is valuable.
This is why we're watching on Apple TV right now. Netflix is...
But here's the interesting thing. It's like, let's pretend you woke up and like there just was no content made. Wouldn't that be good for the streaming service? Because you're still going to watch shit, right? And you're just like, this is all crap.
No, people cancel all the time. So this is why my least favorite streaming tactic is the sort of splitting the seasons of the hot new shows so you don't churn when the season ends.
This is a big strategy.
And they do this for everything. And I really don't like this strategy. I just would want...
But why? Of course, it sounds great.
Well,
what do you not like about it?
Then I want to know. I don't want to wait 2 weeks to get the next 6 episodes of The Crown.
But you're not exactly the demographic that's going to cancel the streaming services when the show's over. I mean, like, obviously the other problem, which is we have like 8 accounts on each of them because we keep buying new ones. And
we actually don't. 1Password has this very streamlined. Also, we always abide by the terms of service around sharing of the subscribers. I just want everyone to know that. I do have a problem with Netflix downloads being across too many devices thanks to my children that is currently killing me. That aside, Britt, where would you put Netflix in the kind of media Hollywood hierarchy
I was also
days?
surprised. I didn't expect it to be this good. My personal consumption of Netflix has been down over the last 6 months, I would say, in favor of splitting my time across other networks and platforms. So, I was surprised to see it. But yeah, their revenue's up 12%. They added 13 million subscribers. So I think a lot of their growth continues to be in international. And I don't know about you guys, but I've been getting fed a lot of international Netflix content that's dubbed in English. So I think one of their strategies has been to figure out how to utilize their content library more efficiently so that the volume of content does make the consumer feel like there's just a plethora of supply, even in these new markets they're opening up to.
We're watching Tears of God.
No, we plugged.
We talked about it at the
last
gala.
week, right? Yeah, drops of
you
God.
Guys. We have to talk about the churn rate here. Like, I'm looking at a churn rate chart.
It's high.
I mean, they've gone from below 2% in January of 19 to
2% per what?
Per month to now they're approaching 4%. So it's, to me, that looks like they're losing anywhere from, 50 million users per year in 2019 to close to 100 million per year.
Well, to be clear, if it's 4% a month, they're losing half they'll reacquire half their users every year.
Like, that's a crazy bad business.
The question is the cost of reacquisition and what churn means. Like, are people just churning in that they're like canceling, but they're clearly going to come back? And so like the cost of reacquisition is like having a show where they click on an email, right? I just think it's like there's soft churn and hard churn. I agree. Like, you can't lose half your customers every year forever at that scale and not run out of customers if they're like, I'm never signing up for Netflix.
Like, that's
again.
crazy, Sam. You have to acquire 100 million people every year. Like, that's nuts.
It's really
I agree. Hard. Obviously, the question is just like, what does that actually mean? Because if I could totally imagine, like, there used to be people at like places like Meta, Facebook, who were called the super log outers, who would literally like, they did not want to be active on when they weren't using. So they literally like every day or every week cancel their accounts, and then just when they wanted to use Facebook, like turn it back on.
Dave's point is about the trend, though. Like, you could come up with any way to compute it and find fault with it, but like there's a clear trend here. Is that your point, Dave?
Yeah, and like you look at, since we were talking about the NFL earlier, like 2 weeks ago, Peacock bought the exclusive rights to the NFL games, and they apparently acquired a ton of subscribers. And at the time I was thinking, wow, that's amazing. But then I went and looked at their churn rate, and their churn rate's way worse than Netflix. Go ahead.
I hear you, but just hear me, which is like, okay, you have two strategies, right, in these things. Please hear me out. Which is like,
guys, we're listening. This is our listening ears. Okay,
I would like, yeah, give. I don't get enough airtime.
I'm writing
the numbers say otherwise.
the churn. I just want to just be clear about what churn means, right? Like, if you have like card on file, right, and you're paying month to month, and then every month you're like, am I done? Is there something I want to watch? Or do I quote unquote cancel, but my card's on file, and the second there's something I watch, I come right back and it's a totally easy experience? That's a different type of churn than being like, I'm done with this service and not coming back. And I think the reality is at Netflix scale, they could have a choice. They could say, hey, we're only doing annual plans or 10-year plans, right? Then their churn would look like zero, right? But the reality is they have to discount every month. The other strategy is you charge more per month and accept more month-to-month churn, but it's not actually like it's not like software churn where like you're like, I'm done using Figma forever, right? It's like a different type of churn. And so I just think it's like, I hear you. I don't think it's good, but I don't think the fact that like they have to quote unquote saying they have to reacquire 50% of their users every year can mean very different things. And there could be a logic to it, which is charge more per month and accept the fact people super log out effectively, or charge less and try to have annuals with lower churn but less money.
Well, it also comes down to like, what do they have to do to acquire these people? Is it about just like investing in original content, which like seems like it's like not clear that's totally working. Like the churn rates are going up despite the amount these guys are having to spend on original content.
But they're charging more too. I just wonder, again, I'm not arguing. I'm just saying like, I would rather churn half my audience a year, charge $100 a month, and have to reacquire them with a single email being like, we have something you want, versus charge $100 a year and lose no one, right? But make less money. So I think it's a pricing strategy question as much as it is anything else.
Do you guys think that they should do more with like in-app purchases to add on to like differentiated revenue models? Like, I'm surprised that there's not a way to sort of.
Aren't they doing that? I thought they were adding games now.
They're experimenting with it, and they also have like live experiences.
Yeah,
Bridgerton
like there are things I
Live.
would pay for that I'm on top of my subscription, where I think they could.
But meanwhile, like I'm really into YouTube TV for this reason, right? Like YouTube TV.
That's where I watch football.
Guys, I called it. YouTube TV is going to win in the long
YouTube TV is
run.
amazing.
It's so expensive.
It's the same amount as like direct TV cost. You get it's like $70.
I think it's more.
It's like
Isn't it
$70.
more?
That's like how much a cable subscription costs. But it's what a cable
That's 10
subscription
Netflix
costs.
subscriptions.
Well, but that's the point.
Look, I get it, but we don't watch it. Like, and we get ads on it too. It was, I'm the one who paid.
I will use it for the Oscars, and we will have used it 5 times this
You
year.
guys are abnormal TV watchers. We watch a lot of TV in this household, and we get a lot of value out of our YouTube TV subscription.
To be clear, I think it's great too, because I would never pay and deal with Comcast, right? Like for a cable subscription. So like I'm happy to pay it, and we do, but it is kind of a fun. You talk about super churning. I actually at one point I bought it. We basically pay probably $15 an hour, given our level of use of YouTube TV. More.
It's not too bad.
Maybe even 100. But that's a good example of a churn where like historically I have churned on that and come back because I'm like, this is like a bill we don't use. But in this moment I do have an active account.
What else should we be watching live? This is a genuine question. Television watcher more in
sports and major events like the Oscars and the Grammys and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
But you guys are so old. No one watches this shit.
Yeah,
anymore.
I mean that's the truth is that it really does. Like Gen Z does not watch
sports
live TV.
I think that yes.
I don't know.
They certainly don't watch
when
the
they're
Oscars.
like 38 and
wait, but weren't we talking about media, Jess? Like I thought this was bigger than just Netflix.
No, it is. But I mean, Netflix is pretty big. I also think Netflix is important in part because big is winning. We were talking about that earlier. And yeah, but the business model is kind of challenged and shaky and there's a lot of headwinds, but big is still winning. And I think that like just shows big is big.
Big is in. I'd also say this relates to our payment conversation because part of the reason you have churn numbers is if you have card on file and it's so easy to just pay for another thing, then like why bother like staying always logged in, right? Like why not just use it on demand? Like that's going to be the interesting challenge of all this stuff.
Yeah, if they make it so easy to watch and then you want to watch the next season.
It's too easy to cancel and your card's on file and you just like say like fine, click a button and I have my live event and then I'm done and I cancel. Like that's a very reasonable consumer experience, right?
And that's not the dynamic. The cable company had a bigger moat,
Yeah, you gotta. I mean, the moat was how terrible support was, and that stupid box you had to return. Right? It's like no. So
now we're seeing, just to bring the streaming to a close, and we can end on the incredibly optimistic note of the future of news. This will be like news corner.
I got one.
Maybe we'll need a pop culture corner, Britt, to balance it out. But now we're seeing. Okay, so you're seeing the streaming rebundling. So I'm going to get the details wrong, but Charter. That's John Malone's cable company. When they were renegotiating with ESPN and Disney, they had their fight over the carriage fees. And the solution was actually also addressed kind of incorporating and bundling their streaming products, right? So at the same time that you are seeing a shakeout with there being too many streaming products. And then you see people like Amazon or Verizon or the cable companies themselves kind of try and rebundle those. So we're also in that crazy phase of this whole thing. We're also in the phase of then dual business modeling. So for all its help, for all its relative success, I don't think Netflix's ad business has taken the world by storm. So I think many, many more shoes to drop, but it's just kind of interesting to me that the big has not died.
Yeah, it's like the winners are Netflix and YouTube TV.
Dramatically.
And like 2 of the 5 letters in FANG.
Is YouTube TV popular? Like, I should know this, but like, how is that product doing?
It's growing really fast.
I'm long YouTube TV. I put my chips on YouTube TV.
Sam's shaking his head.
I know, but
Britt, you worked on Google TV. You're this is in your DNA.
Most people like to watch a lot of different types of television, live events, all these different things. And what unbundles is bundling back right now. I think we're on the upward trajectory of bundling. I think YouTube TV has the best bundle by far. And I think people are tired of paying for 20 different streaming services. They're already paying $10 a month for 20 things. They might as well pay 70 or $80 a month for like one thing and maybe a couple others. And I think over at the end of the day, they're going to want to get back into that.
Wow. I just looked it up and it is.
Dave, bring in the facts to the convo every week. We love you for it.
They added 600,000 new customers in the third quarter of 2023. It is now at 6.5 million TV customers, which would put it in fifth place just behind Dish, which has 6.7 million. Comcast has 14. Spectrum has 14. DirecTV has 11. So YouTube TV is like, that's non-trivial. It's half the size of Comcast.
So the other theory, I mean, Sam, your point earlier about, the insurgent, as the incumbents get stronger, the bar is higher for the insurgents to compete and have to find really differentiated ways. I mean, YouTube was the insurgent. The cable companies were the incumbents. If you wait long enough, sometimes it just happens. I mean, I think that's literally what's happened here with YouTube/Google and television. Like they just stayed in the game.
Well, they also have two things: incredible convenience, right? Like it's accessible everywhere on everything. It's like every TV, you can get on your computer, your phone, whatever. But they also have an insanely differentiated content library on
personalized data. Like they know you way better than Netflix or any other streaming service.
Yeah, they asked me some weird questions. Someone quote unquote knows me. I mean, I think. Look, here's the reality. One, all startups eventually end up looking like the people they were competing with when they get big enough over enough time. Like that's just how the life works.
Fair enough.
So it's kind of fun.
If you survive, you
end up becoming exactly what you set out to fight. That's how it always works, right? Two, I just point out just in terms of a few things. Like two, the insurgent is TikTok. The insurgent is not like other streamings. It's like the question is just like where are you spending your entertainment time? And like it's not like one there's the other. Third thing I say, the bundling thing, I get it, but I gotta say I'm a little skeptical it's gonna work that well from a long-term business perspective, because here's the problem. To the point about super cancelers, you hear about a show, you're gonna watch the goddamn show. Do you care if it's on Apple or Hulu or Netflix or whatever? Like, I agree that there's a segment of consumers that will just like binge on a single service because they paid for it.
Yeah, I mean, Peacock proved that, right?
But like the reality is like you're just gonna watch whatever is good and you'll cancel the things you're not using.
I think most people are so price constrained that they don't want to forget to have to cancel. Like $10 to $15 a month is meaningful in a monthly budget. And
but of course it is.
But they're not going to also just join new things to watch one show. Like I know a bunch of 23, 24-year-olds who are like, oh, it's on Paramount Plus. Like I guess I won't watch it then.
Well, Paramount Plus is the fucking worst because they somehow serve me ads even when I paid for it, which I do not understand.
That's because in Amazon, we click Amazon, that button is the bane of my existence. More ways to watch this. It's like, no, I want the one way to watch it. If you click the more ways to watch, you get 14 different versions of Yellowstone. And how do you know? And then you click on the one with ads.
My suggestion is, this is January. Let's flag this to come back to in December and see who was more right on their trajectory.
Well, I will say, I'm willing to say that I will say YouTube will definitely have more subscribers than Dish by the next time we check in on this. That seems obvious.
And Sam, funny enough, I'm staring at the data and Paramount is actually growing and its churn rate is growing basically the most aggressively on this whole chart.
Yeah, I'm not long Paramount, just for the record.
Yeah, I just think we should define, again, my episode is like define what churn. Churn is a complicated concept, right?
Yes. By the way, we're hiring a retention expert at The Information. We have fabulous retention, but this is a hot area. So if you're interested in what Sam said, call me. And if you're not, I would understand.
The most impressive numbers on this chart are actually Apple TV. They're consistently improving their retention over time.
Dan, I have to look at this chart. The third parties just guess. It could be right. It could be wrong.
No, it's Antenna. They've got a lot of data. Yeah.
That's because Apple's like, if you unsubscribe from Apple TV, we'll brick your phone. And then it's like, okay, I guess I'm gonna keep subscribing.
I saw Oscar nominations out. I get so many press releases, but Apple got 13 nominations according to my inbox, which was double thank you, Dave. It looks really authoritative.
No, antenna's real.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard of it. They should call me. But anyway.
Oscars. Killers of the Flower Moon. We just finished it. It took us like 4 days before bed, 45 minutes each. Yeah. And it is a good story that could have been done in 2 hours, but like Scorsese wanted to elaborate.
Oh, I don't like that.
I just started thinking of it as a series that I was watching. I would watch it until I got tired and then just watch the next amount the next time I had time to watch. And I think that's actually must be why they're doing this, right? Like I had heard in the back channels that the reason James Cameron did Avatar for that long was that he was just like, yo, people are binge watching things these days. Like, why not take the story as long as I want to take the story?
It's 1,000 TikToks.
Yeah, people will just...
Yes. Oh my God, that's right. You got 2 TikTok mentions in this episode, and I only promised you 1. So
remember, but last time I mentioned is TikTok needs to be banned in the United States. Thank you.
That's the
And I agree with Sam.
Bring us. This is actually a pop culture important time. I mean, we're in award season.
And Ken got the nod. I do think that all the headlines being like Barbie movie and Ken got the nod is it is pretty funny.
I think they did it on purpose.
Here's the thing.
Funny is not the word I would use.
Step back from politics, step back from all things. Just like if you're eating popcorn and being like hilarious,
it's ironic.
The world is hilarious. It is funny that Greta and all the women did not get the nod.
Okay, I would like to know the gender breakdown of the Oscars voters. I would love to see the gender breakdown. I think Newsom should require it as part of the new 2025 bill.
Guys, in the summer, everyone thought that Ken stole the show. Like, that was the thing.
Greta Gerwig stole the show.
Ken stole the show.
Oh my goodness. Gender.
No, we can go back to the episode. I promise you, last time
Ken did a nice job. Ken did a nice job. I enjoyed that movie in its entirety.
All I know is the Oscars did this on purpose because they could not have bought better PR than what's going on right now.
Nothing like a good culture war.
Insurance.
Everyone loves a good culture war.
I mean, the dresses on the red carpet are going to really be something. Britt, bring us to some pop culture insight to take into this weekend, because we don't have enough to be excited about.
Apart from the Oscars noms being out on the market, I got some false eyelashes done by a robot. And people are really interested in this, apparently, because it has like 50,000 views already on Instagram. But yeah, I laid down on a bed and had a robot with sharp tweezers like millimeters away from my eyeballs putting false lashes on me. And it was a fascinating experience. And so I'm thinking about the future of robotics and how that impacts beauty and how that impacts food. There are now like nail salons that will do your nails for you that are robots. There's like eyebrow stuff you can get. So Sam, okay, when I talk about this, the men's faces glaze over and the women are like, tell me more.
Yeah, but Sam, why are you negative? Negative's a strong word.
Look,
Negative's a strong word.
This thing my dad taught me when I was a kid. He said, Sam, never, ever, ever compete in a business against people who don't pay their taxes. And my sense is that the lash people and the nail people do not pay their taxes. So it's going to be an uphill battle, right? Because in terms of actually getting it done.
Interesting.
That's why, for instance, dry cleaning is a terrible business. Dry cleaners don't pay their taxes. So even if you have a better dry cleaning service, you're going to lose.
Robot can do the work of a human 5 times faster and for less money.
Yeah, I get it. I just think the robot has a disadvantage because the robot has to pay taxes.
I don't know.
And
I think
that's
the future of my headline is I think that there is a future industry within the beauty and wellness category that robots will break into and disrupt. So watch this space.
We can definitely do a wellness corner. I have a lot of thoughts.
2 things that were told to me at the gala, by the way. A lot of talk about peptides and a lot of talk about colostrum face serum.
So much peptides.
And if you know what colostrum is, it's the stuff that comes out before breast milk that's yellow.
We can skip them.
I get ads on Instagram for colostrum drinks. Do you get those?
And meanwhile, I checked with my doctor and all of this is nonsense.
No, peptides are great. My hair and nails grow so fast.
There's absolutely no science.
Jess, do my hair and nails grow fast?
I think it's placebo. I think you're willing it to happen, Sam.
No. I think that works. But we could do a little peptide episode. It'll be our most controversial yet.
I've actually got a great doctor we can bring on that's quite good at this stuff.
No, we don't want an expert.
Dave with the facts. Dave with the facts. Okay, listeners, you stuck with us. Thank you. Another fun week. So much going on. I'm ready for January to be over because it is a tough and busy month. But we will be back next week on location if I can figure out how to do that.
Guess what? I have another pool house guest. Can you say hi because the episode's over?
Okay,
Absolutely.
This is like a game show where we're guessing who's behind the wall. Okay, I think it's a founder, not an investor.
Who's it?
I see him walking in. There's a backpack.
Okay,
There's
founder.
a backpack.
I think it's a man.
Everyone meet Paul. Hello. Paul is my next meeting.
I don't know Paul.
Come on, come closer.
I know this podcast.
You know the Paul. Welcome to More or Less.
Surprise guest.
You're on the air.
This is the year of guests. So Paul and I have a meeting next. But Paul, you wanna tell the More or Less crowd what you're up to before we sit down and have a real conversation?
Sure.
Get closer.
So I'm working on my second startup. My first startup, Slow Ventures backed. Thank you, Sam.
Hell yeah.
Was Human Interest. We help small businesses and startups offer 401ks to their employees.
Nice to meet you. We're customers.
Yeah, you were very early customers. Thank you for believing in us.
I wonder how that happened.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What's the new company?
What's next?
What's next? Naturally, my next company is in gaming. I'm making video games.
Departure. I love it when founders do this. We get LPs all the time who are like, why would you bet on that founder's second company when it was so different from the first? like founders are just curious people.
You know what I really enjoy about it is I meet gaming people. I meet like really great game artists and so on. And I tell them about Human Interest and they just don't give a fuck. They just don't know what YC is. They just don't care. So it's sort of like being a beginner again, which I enjoy. I love challenging myself. So yeah, we went through Speedrun, which is Andreessen Horowitz's new YC-like program for games companies. We're in the first class of Speedrun. And hopefully we'll have something new to share soon. You can follow us on Twitter at ElsewareZone.
Great.
I love this. Come to the pool
I love
house.
it. This is a good pitch.
This is awesome.
It's
I'm going to put a meeting after every More or Less
You
episode.
should, Sam. That's great.
Make it a thing.
This is great.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Talk to you guys.
See you next.
Bye.
Bye, guys. We'll see you soon. Thanks to our back channel, our listeners, our social media friends. Share the love, share the clips. There are going to be some good clips from this episode, by the way, so share them. All about Sam and his...
Jess, I'll get your hat down to you.
I got to wear it, Dave. Got to wear it.
See ya.
Can't wait. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.